All right, finally, here we go. We got Manfred, and I've been asking for this for about a year now since I met you. You.
Well, thanks for having me on here. Hopefully, I don't let you down.
No, no, not at all. I met you by you walking into my. Actually, you called me, right?
Yes.
How'd you end up finding me?
Well, I had your business, Prime America, if I can say that, for years, and we just looked for a different insurance agent, and your name popped up, and I thought, hey, that looks good. Let's do it.
Okay.
I'm familiar with this building because my wife's cousin used to run right in this office. Used to for Native Americans. She's a Native American, and they used to have an office here. So
Okay. Awesome, awesome. And so you gave us a call, and you came in, and then
right, we hit it off.
we got some business going. Now, when I met you, though, you started giving me some. You told me about a few things you stuck out. Your father was in World War II,
World War
right?
II in Korea.
Correct. And then you also used to scuba dive in the Great Lakes.
In my healthier days, yes, I've dove in the Great Lakes. I've dove in the oceans, Pacific, Atlantic, Gulf of Mexico, down in the Keys.
Okay.
It was great. It was great. I have certifications in basic diving, advanced deep water wreck diving. Had a lot of good experiences, and there's a lot of memories.
Okay. And then the other thing is you're a big gun collector as well.
Oh yeah, I believe in the Second Amendment. I'm not one of these fanatics who goes out and blatantly uses the weapon wrong.
Right.
A weapon is like anything else. It's a people might disagree with me, but it's a tool.
Right.
As long as you treat it with respect and you treat your fellow humans with respect, you should never even bother with it. It's just something that's there when you want to go and have a little fun. You can go hunting with the deer, or the other like pheasants, turkeys, whatever, like I used to do in my youth, and or you can just go to the range, and that's what I really enjoy, going to the range. And it's not just the shooting part; it's the association with the people. Like when we got together, I had a good time. Yeah. Even now in my where I'm not quite as healthy as I used to be, even then now, man, I was more or less watching you guys shoot, and I was getting a kick out of it.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, it was fun. I appreciate you coming along.
You pull us messing up, trying to figure out how the gun works, and
Yeah, well,
that's the hoot, huh?
especially when you're trying to video it, you can always redo it,
Right,
But
right.
no, you didn't mess up. You were fine.
Thank you.
I wasn't too happy with that girl that was trying. I mean, obviously she has to watch the range officer, but she just kept on jumping in there, and I'm like, these guys are doing fine. Just let them. All you have to remember is never aim it down or at anybody else. You always aim down range, and you just keep your finger off the trigger. And what else is there? You'll figure it out.
That's right. That's right. So now going, how old are you right now, Manfred?
I am 63.
63.
Yes, I was born in Stuttgart, Germany,
Okay.
and we were an army family. My dad was in the service for 21 years, and my mom was a war bride. She lived most of her youth rather. She lived it in Germany. She came from Poland, and she had a lot of stories on her own. They're both gone now, and I miss them dearly. But I remember some of the stories, where she met my dad. She worked, towards the end of the war. She worked with the Americans at. She was like a candy striper, kind of like a nurse, but it was more with the Red Cross.
Okay.
And she assisted. And I remember her telling me how she met my dad, and she had a thing for him. She fell in love, but remember, this is right after the war, so there were a lot of resentful Germans, especially her folks, my grandparents, and they didn't really like my dad. But my dad had a way of, really saying, hey, I'm okay. Well, just get to know me. And so, all right, he met them, and they liked him afterwards. And my mom took my dad to the theater. Mm. They were playing Bells of St. Mary with Bing Crosby, an early movie. And this was at the theater. This wasn't on TV. TV wasn't a big thing then. It was still new. I mean, but they hit it off, and the rest is history. I had the siblings. I had a sister who passed on when she was 63, unfortunately, of brain aneurysm. I have two brothers that are still alive. One lives out in Waukesha, and the other one lives down in Tennessee, and in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, right where they deal with the atomic bomb stuff.
Oh, wow.
And
Did or do?
they still do.
Oh.
Yeah, they got a lab there. The basic atomic bomb was obviously in Los Alamos,
Yeah.
in New Mexico, but yeah, they still do. And I love both my brothers, and you know, they have a little hard time getting together between my two brothers because they've had a parting of the ways. But you know, we all have to. We've only got so much life in us, and you know, I don't want to be known as passing on and not being loved by my family. You know, and that's one of the things that bothers me. I have to give my brother well, they're both older than I am. I don't need to mention names, but my one brother, he had a parting with his own kids. And just recently, he met his oldest boy, and the parting was for 29 years. And he finally met him, and they kind of they hit it off, you know, like, hey, what are we doing, you know? Why were we like this, you know? And that's what you gotta have. You gotta have just a love. You don't have to always be resentful or, you know, have a pity, you know, or not pity, you know, where you're just not feeling it with your family, because, you know, that's what it is. You gotta just love everybody at any time, man. So, but anyways, enough of that.
But I know you say that because, well, I mean, if it's okay to disclose, I mean, some things you've gone through personally.
Oh yeah.
Right.
My wife, her name is Rita, and I fell in love with her back in high school days.
Yeah.
And like I say, I'm 63. I won't mention her name because it's not polite to mention a lady's her age, rather, because it's not polite to mention ages for women. But she's older than me. That's another story. We hit it off. This is way back. You know, we got married in 1982, and we've been married over 42 years. And this is way back when.
Congrats.
Thank you. It was way back when Milwaukee County, the bus service was on strike. You don't really hear about that now, but it was on strike. So I rode my bike to Jackson Park, which is right over here, and my wife walked here, and we kind of hit it off. We were doing a science field study. We were doing tests in the water and on the air and all this, you know, as part of school. And we hit it off, and we just decided, well, let's give it a shot. And we've known each other for like 3 or 4 years prior to us getting married. And then, like I say, we're just, you know, unfortunately, we weren't really blessed with having children. We've had issues with that, but, you know, we still love each other, and we love our families. And I don't have any regrets marrying her, because she's a Menominee, and her mother was from, I think she's Chippewa, from the Mille Band of White Earth, Minnesota. Her dad was a Menominee. They have family still up there. And, you know, she used to be a child care worker most of her life. And she used to work she worked down at UWM, Milwaukee. She worked at 2 other daycares prior to ending in her retirement because of her health at MATC. And me, I worked for over 30 plus years at good old J.C. Penney, which nice. Is, I wasn't, this was the warehouse or catalog distribution center. And the catalog distribution center kind of went the way of the dinosaur.
They tore it down, didn't they?
Well, no, they tore a big section of it. That's not J.C. Penney anymore. They sold the building. It used to be a big 2.2 million square foot building.
Oh, man.
And I was in the maintenance department. And I ended up working my last 10 years of employment. I was working with the third shift maintenance crew. Okay. And I was kind of in charge of these 2 to sometimes 3 other guys. And these guys were younger than me, and they worked really well. They were good guys, you know. And I knew when we were working on this one sort, and you got to climb up this railing, not a rail, you know, hand over hand rail, going up to the sort. It was like 15 feet in the air. And I knew that these guys are going up and down, and by the time I got up there, they were up and down and grabbing tools or whatever, because we had these little scooters with our toolboxes on it. And I'm saying, man, you know, I think it's time for me to get out of this, because I started having health issues back then. And so I told my wife, I says, you know, I can't do this anymore. I said, I'm going to have to take an early retirement. Well, what happened back in the early 2000s, when the world was going in chaos due to 9/11,
Yeah.
and then nobody trusted nobody, they changed their format. Pennies used to always be, when I first started there in '79, they were always we are a family kind of attitude. And then they became the usual, like every other place, hey, if you don't want to work here, then go somewhere else or quit. And, I don't want to knock JCPenney. They were always good to me. And what happened is I got let go for a week. I was a low man on the pole. And they called me back in a week. It was a formality to them. It's because they wanted to mess with my pension and that. So they gave me this check for a couple $1,000s, and that was my pension. And this is right where pension went to 401k, so I had both actually. And so they called me back, and it was I lost the pension, but I was able to keep my. They grandfathered in my seniority, and they grandfathered in my vacation. I mean, I had like 7 weeks vacation. I was happy with that. And I love the guys that I worked with. They're great guys. They're smart, and they were always, decent. But anyways, it was...
So when you said formality, you said they took you off for a week, right? You got fired for...
No, I didn't get fired. Well...
Or let go.
Let go.
It was,
yeah.
Right?
They never said fired, but yes.
Right, let go. Are you
with
still
the
let
intention?
go?
No, with the intentions of hiring me back.
Okay.
They told me that to my face. It was a formality.
So you lost... What would have been your pension if you wouldn't have gotten that week off?
Well, that's why I could never understand that, how I got such a small check, and at that time I already had over 20 years in. I already had over 20 years in, so it didn't seem right. But I guess maybe they gave me the couple $1,000s just for that week or whatever, because they knew they were going to give me back. Or I thought, okay, if they're only going to give it to me for that week, this small amount, then I'd be getting my pension back, but I didn't. But what happened was I told my wife I had to just quit, even though, and I was looking at what I'd be making a month if I retired early, and I'm like, well, we'll survive. But what happened, I was so fortunate that the JCPenney company looked at 6,000 employees across the country who met the criteria of how many years of service, their age, stuff like that. And I fell into that spot. I was one of the 6,000. So they gave us they call it a VERP, which is Voluntary Early Retirement Package. And so that's a little more money per month. And I was so happy with that because we could survive. But then, like I say, and it's a good thing I stopped working because my health really went down. I had a heart attack when I was 42.
Oh.
And I had open heart surgery in my 40s. I developed diabetes. In the last 5 years, I developed cancer. And I had colorectal cancer. And I had surgery, and they removed the cancer. But unfortunately, the cancer, I can't remember what the word they used, but it more or less it spread. So I had a spot on my liver and a spot on my right lung. I had the liver taken care of surgically, and I have to go in for another CAT scan or CT scan to see if it's clean, and to work on the lung. But I think it'll be fine. It's a spot. It's real small, and I have faith in my doctors. They're very good at Freighted. So, but anyways, and my wife, like I said, she's kind of messed up too. She's on constant air. She's hunched over some old lady. And she's got a quick mind, and so do I. I'm sorry.
You're good.
Oh, and if you feel I'm going on too long about something...
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay.
No, so you made the point, right? You've faced some health challenges since 42 till now.
Yeah.
Right?
It's gotten, it obviously doesn't get any better. I also developed lymphedema for the last 20 years. Lymphedema in my legs. And what that basically is your legs don't circulate properly like they're supposed to,
Blood?
It's like waste material.
Okay.
There's always waste material that goes through your system and you reject it through means,
Okay.
And it wasn't. And then that's how you ever see these people with their legs swelling,
Okay.
and all that, and other things happen. And I've been working with that, with treatments and therapy. And then I also developed neuropathy, which is, thanks to the chemo, unfortunately, it kind of messes with the nerves.
Okay.
So the nerves in my legs and my hands are kind of messed up. Like right now, my fingers feel like they're tingly and kind of asleep. I can still use them. Like my legs, I can still use them. I mean, I can still drive and stuff. But I notice a difference. I can't run now. I can barely walk. I mean, you look at me walking, it looks like I'm a drunkard walking down the street because I'm wobbling side to side, you know. But, you know, at least I get around. I used to use a walker.
Right.
Like my wife has to use a walker. And I'm weaning myself off of that because, the only way you're going to get healthy is to not depend on everything all the time because you get so used to this walker that that's just going to be how it is.
Right.
And if I can get off that, start with the walk. I don't think I'll ever run, but, see what happens down the road. It's like a baby. You crawl, you walk, you run.
Nice. Now you're being, okay. I guess what's your outlook on life with that then? That being said, like...
Well, in honesty, I don't expect to live like my folks. I mean, they've seen a rough life, with...
What does that mean?
Well, with the war and,
okay.
Them just living together. It was a different time, I mean... When my dad was a kid, he had to deal with the depression and all that. It was a rough time. Right. And my mom had to deal with the war. I mean, like I said, she was a war bride. When she was in Germany, she had to work at a labor camp, which was not like a concentration camp, but it was still, you work or
right.
You're no longer of use to us.
Right.
And she had to do things that you and I wouldn't do now. You're out in the dead winter, and you have to bathe, and you got the salt long trough outside the court, and you bathe, and there's people you don't even know all around you, and you just take your clothes off and you bathe, and there's no indecency because people mind their own business. They don't. And so she went through a lot, and I don't think I could do that. I don't think I could take my clothes off in front of everybody and start bathing. But no, so they had their own problems, and my problems. Do I think I'm gonna? They were in their 90s. So I guess what they were saying. They both passed on in about 93. Mm. And I don't think I'm going to obviously live that long. I'd be happy if I could live to 65. I'm 63 now.
That's 2 years, man.
That's only 2 years. Well, it depends on how this goes. I talked to the doctor, and I originally didn't want the surgery because, unfortunately, with this surgery, I have to, from now on, use a colostomy bag, which is attached to my abdomen. And that's how I go to the restroom, unfortunately. Not to be gross. But, and I'm used to it now. I didn't want it. Because I thought, man, it's going to be hurting or it's going to be obvious. I don't want it. And once I got it, it's not bad. It's easy to take care of. I've had a few accidents where it kind of went off on me, and then I have to, clean myself up. But I got that under control. And I just, I deal with it, and but I originally said to the doctor, I said, I really don't want the surgery. I don't want to go through that. I says, what do you give me, 5 years, maybe more? And he looked at me and he said straight, he says, I give you maybe a year to 2 years. Because at that time, when I first found, I was having problems when I used to go to the restroom. It was, how the old story is, you're going to the restroom and you have to watch out if there's blood. Well, it was blood. And so I thought it was something else, and it wasn't. And I had that one of those, when you do the old camera up there.
Yeah.
Anyways, and the first thing the guy told me, right there, I'm still laying there. He said, I'm sorry to tell you, but you have cancer. You could tell right away what it was. And it was stage 3. Which, a lot of times, it's like you go up to stage 4 and that's it, your history. And some people, the chances of me surviving at stage 3 were less than 50%, I think. I could be wrong. But, I have people that are, like I said, again, with love. I have the people who love me and I love them. And that kind of helps me going, I have a brother-in-law, and that's my wife's sister's husband, and we're tight. We're the ones that used to dive together, and we did all our trips together. And thanks to him, I can say that I went to almost every state in the Union, in the 48 lower states. I could say that. We even went on a cruise to Alaska. We enjoyed it so much. And he's very close to me. He's a brother. And we were just together yesterday.
But the doctor told you.
Oh yes, getting back to that. Yeah, well, it's misery, but yeah, he told me he's sorry, and it looks like that, and I'm gonna have to deal with it. And I had radiation. I had to go every day for 6 weeks. I had the chemo, and the chemo was every time I had to go, it was like 2 to 3 hours of treatment, and it never really hurt. But there were side effects like everything else, like with the neuropathy, and for a long time there, it kind of was a blessing because I was large. I was heavier than I am. I look heavy now, but I was heavier, and all of a sudden, I started losing drastic weight. I'll admit it, I was almost 400 pounds, and I started losing weight. Next thing you know, I'm 280.
Oh wow.
Well, I thought, hey, this is a good thing, but it's not a good thing because the only reason I'm losing weight is because when you have this treatment, you don't have that appetite. So you just don't want to eat. Yeah. And that's not good for you. True. And it was, the effects were you drink water or you drink anything. I couldn't drink anything really cold because it hurt drinking cold. And when I would drink anything, even water, it felt like I was drinking sand. It was very gritty and gravelly going down my throat. And it was uncomfortable. But that's all passed. Everything's back to normal. And unfortunately, so is my appetite, and I've been gaining weight again. But, oh what? When you got people who treat you good and make good food, you can't say no. But yeah, I'm looking at it, honestly, a couple of years, but maybe I'm wrong. And I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I'd like to be able to live to a ripe old age. I'm not old. I'm not ancient. You don't dust me off and put me somewhere in a corner. But
you could.
You could?
Taxidermy.
There you go. Oh, geez. Okay. Are we watching one of those horror movies now? No. Stuff me and put me in a corner. Well, yeah. That's funny you mentioned that. I was talking to my wife about when we pass. We're making a mistake right now. I mean, I've got when it comes to the hospitals, I got all my paperwork made out as far as resuscitation and things like that. But we're talking about a will. We didn't really make our will out yet. What goes to whom and. But my wife has got it in her head that she wants to be cremated. And it hurts because I even though she's going to be gone, I want to be close to her. Yeah. So I told her, and I joked about that. I said, well, I'll just have to stuff you, put you in a corner somewhere. But I says, if you're going to be cremated, I'm going to let you know. I probably won't get a tomb or a mausoleum for you. I'm going to keep you on a mantle.
There you go.
And I guess there's nothing wrong with that. But her mom passed. She was young. She was only 73. And she's at Forest Home Cemetery. They have what they call a garden wishing well. She always wanted to be cremated, and she wanted to be spread in flowers and stuff. Well, the funny thing is, it's something, I can't remember what the first word is, but something garden. It's an actual large wishing well. Okay. And it's not actually a wishing well. There's no water or nothing on there. It's screened off. And what they do is they pour the ashes in this. And that's what we did for her. And her name is on a little plaque on the outside with the date. And now my wife's got it in her head that she wants to be cremated. But I'm not going to part with her. I'm going to keep her close by. Because, lately, with what's been going on to both our healths, we've got even closer. That's kind of hard to fathom. But we've got even closer. I mean, there are times we'll watch TV together, we'll be sitting on the couch, and we just sit there like two teenagers holding hands, watching TV, and she's got, unfortunately,
That's beautiful, man.
Yeah, well, she's got a sleeping disorder. And that's, I think, is because of her lack of oxygen. She's very tired all the time. She's been to iron infusions, and she takes iron pills, and she's got a BiPAP, which is, you know what a CPAP is, where you put it on at night when you go to sleep, and it helps you breathe. Well, a BiPAP is where you hook because she's always on oxygen, you hooked up the oxygen machine to the BiPAP, and she sleeps that way. And it helps her. I've noticed her a little more alert. But she'll fall asleep if she does, and she'll put her head on my lap or head on my shoulder, and I don't want to move. I might have to go to the bathroom real bad, but I don't want to move because I'm enjoying this. She's a wonderful wife, and I have no regrets ever. We don't argue anymore. We used to, like everybody. I wouldn't say arguing. I mean, I've never been abusive to my wife. Right. In fact, it's the opposite. When I used to hassle her and tease her, which was dumb of me because, my wife was a peace-loving person. But I got to her to the point I was wrestling with her. And so she, honest to God, she took her fist and hit me right in my jaw and made my gums bleed. And I knew, since then I was like, okay, you know, I know my limits. I'm sorry, honey. You're always right. I'm always wrong. I'm sorry. Right. But anyways, yeah.
We'll retouch that in a sec, like towards the end. But I just to finish that off, we'll finish off with that. Taking it back. So you told me you used to scuba dive, right?
Yes.
So that was interesting. I love that. I was like, okay, I need to know, and I wanted that specific story of you. You told me one where you had face first with like a shark, and then just you told me about mud in the lakes. I mean, it's just little details of stuff that it's great information. The body you guys found.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first, the shark part, it wasn't right to my face. There was we drove a wreck and there was sharks supposedly in the wreck. And well, I'll tell you that in a minute. But I'm going to start back to the beginning. In the late '70s, my brother-in-law and I got certified through a very nice guy. His name is Jerry Geyer. He was a teacher at Pulaski. He also owns Pirates Cove down the road in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And he, really nice guy. He has a
still
boat.
Around?
Yeah, he's still around. He's got a boat. He goes out on the lakes, diving, to the wrecks. And we took that certification, and we just like, hey, this is not too bad. I mean, my brother-in-law was the adventurous type. We would talk about either that or skydiving, you know, with the parachutes. I'm like, what are you, nuts? You know, okay, I'll try the diving. And some people don't like the diving because they're afraid of the water. Well, it's like everything else. You just got to take it a little easy. You know, I've had episodes where, you know, but yeah, well, we got certified. We had the basic, we had the advanced, and we got the rec and the deep, and all those certifications. We even got what's called a nitrox certification, and that's where you go on a different type of gas. Normally, you're breathing compressed air, but this is more a gases, so that you can't go really as deep, but there's less hang time. And hang time primarily is, you know, when you're down on a wreck, and let's say it's at 100 feet, you know, you have to, and you follow a Navy timetable. You got this little table that you look at, this little chart, and it's like, okay, I can go here for this long. Now, if I exceed that time, I have to go and look at the table, and they call it you gotta hang on the line so you can decompress. Because if you don't, you can get the bends, or you can get bubbles in the system, which could really mess you up. And so, like, if we're at 100 feet and I'm past the limit, you might have to go up to 80 feet for 10 minutes. You just got to make sure you got to work it out that you have enough air. Okay, and you generally do. I was a heavy breather. Not to sound really weird by that, but I was a heavy breather. My brother-in-law was a light breather, you know. And back then, I wasn't as heavy. Between that point and now, I grew, and that's like I say, I stopped diving because I got too heavy. But anyways, and then you go from the 80 feet for 10, then you go to 50 feet for like 5 minutes, or you know, and you work your way to the surface.
What happens if you, just quick knowledge question here, if you were to go from 100 feet and just shoot straight up to the surface?
Well, we were trained at that time to, if we had to make an emergency ascent, you go up and you know, I had a dry suit where you put air in, you can take air out, and you one big thing is you have to remember, you never pass your bubbles. You know, bubbles go up, you don't go faster than them, because then that's the problem. So you kind of take the air out of your suit and you just kind of watch your bubbles, and as you're going up, like, okay, I mean, let's say I'm going up an emergency, I don't have any air. I'm at 100 feet, I don't have any air. You know, you think, oh, you're dead. No, you're not. Because your lungs are compressed because of the depth, you know. You get this little squeeze as you're going down, and you're compressed. So when you think there's no more air in your lungs, there actually is. And you'll start to go up, and they tell you to just like buzz like a bee. And you're slowly letting the air out. That air that would, because if you didn't exhale, these lungs would expand as you're going up, and that could be a problem. Okay. So you slowly exhale, and you generally can make it to the surface. I've had a few incidences like that. I never had to actually do it, but I remember one time we were wrecking on a shipwreck 3 miles out of Milwaukee called the Prince Wilhelm. It was a cargo ship that sank in, I want to say, 54.
Is it still there?
It's Yeah, still it'll be there for the rest of the time until it falls apart. But it was a cargo freighter. It originally was a ship that was built during the war, and the Norwegians, they sunk it in a fjord so that the Germans wouldn't get it. And then after the war, they raised it and they finished building it, and it had service going back and forth. And the ship was outbound, going out of Milwaukee. It had weird stuff. It had Wurlitzer jukeboxes. It had some. It had horse hairs. You know what they used the hairs for musical instruments for the strings and wires and that. It had all different toys, and it was outbound, and about 7 miles out, it come across a tugboat. I think it was a Chicago Sinclair, and it was pulling a barge, and it didn't see the barge. It wasn't. I don't think it was lit up, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong with the story, but this is what I was told. And it had a cable, and it hit the cable, and made a big gash in her side, the bow and the port side. No, excuse me. It was the starboard side. It was the right side, and it was able to turn around, come within 3 miles, and it sank. There was no loss of life, and it sank in about 90 to 100 feet of water. Now, Lake Michigan is basically clay and rock bottom. So that's where the clay gets kind of silty and muddy, and that's where you have to deal with that. So we would dive out there, and it was one of my first wrecks that I really enjoyed. It's resting on its side. Now, this is a 300 or so foot ship, and it was resting on its side. So if you go wreck diving, you have to make sure you remember that you're no longer upright. Everything that you think was upright is now sideways. So, okay, you got your door right here, or your door's up there now.
Oh, okay.
You have to remember which way you go in and which way you come out.
Gotcha. Because
you can get very confused.
The ship is sideways. Got it.
And I know some people who get confused. Excuse me. And there was at least 3 people that I know that through the diving community that have passed. They've made mistakes and they passed. One guy went diving by himself. You should always have a buddy. He went diving in the engine room. And Jerry, I wasn't on that dive at the time. And Jerry had to go down and find, because he never came back up. And Jerry had to go down, and he found them in the engine room. The guy kicked up the silt. And it takes more time for the silt to settle than you have air. And he got confused. He didn't have a buddy. And Jerry found him sitting on the deck or up against the engine, and he started to take his gear off. Because when you freak, you think, I got to get off my gear and try to make it to the surface. And he drowned. And I mean, I've had incidences too where we were diving at the outside of the wreck, and like I say, it's clay bottom, and there's a big trench from where the ship actually came down and starts to penetrate. And we were helping Jerry. We were looking for one of his buoys that filled up and sank. And we found it. And so I handed it to Wayne. It was like a 32-gallon drum. And I handed it to Wayne, and he started to take it to the ascent line. And I started to go. And all of a sudden, I got caught. I got tangled in some railing. And, I couldn't see it because it's behind me. And so I couldn't go anywhere.
So was it like your suit, tank?
Right.
You?
What happened was that the railing got caught between my suit and my tank.
Right, okay.
And all of a sudden, I could see the surface. I could just see the green glow of the surface. And I'm thinking, do I make an emergency ascent? First, do I wait for Wayne to come back? But that might be a while. We're finishing our dive, so my air is low. Or do I make an emergency ascent? No. And I didn't think I couldn't do it. I just didn't want to waste my gear. Yeah, because I'd be taking my gear off.
Right.
So, no, okay. Figure this out. What did you just do? I put a little air in my suit because I'm going up, put a little air so you can float a little bit better. You want neutral buoyancy. That's every time when you dive, you want neutral buoyancy. You don't want to float up. You don't want to sink. You want to find that neutral buoyancy. And I put a little air in because I'm starting to go a little higher, so get more neutral buoyancy, and so I clear the wreck, and that's what happened. I said, well, I did put air in my tank, in my suit, and I got a problem. Let me just take the air out of my suit. I took the air out. I sank down a little bit, and I freed myself. And by that time, my brother-in-law was coming back to see if I was okay. And one of the things I did I said, don't freak, because that's one of the reasons people drown. They freak out. I'll tell you about you mentioned the body before. I'll tell you about that too. He freaked out, and I thought I'm gonna keep my calm. So I had my flashlight in the hand, and I did
SOS.
SOS. And then I worked on the problem. I freed myself. I looked around, and right there, the engine room had like a skyline. With the windows, you can actually, it's a peak, like a roof. And they got big openings. And somebody came out. Another diver came out. And I tried to act cool, like, hey, give him the okay sign. Everything's cool. And like I said, my brother-in-law came over. We went up, and I told him about it. But that was one experience I had. I mean, I know of another guy who he was from Chicago, I believe, with his buddy, and they were in the bridge of the ship. Again, it's outside, but there's a lot of
same ship.
There's a lot of openings.
Yeah.
I mean, the windows, big windows. They got windows at least this size. In your office, there's no glass anymore. It's all popped out. And what happened is the buddies didn't stay together. He came up, and the other one had a heart attack. I had to bring him up. He passed on. You always got to be with your buddy. My brother-in-law was so gung-ho with this wreck diving. When you penetrate a wreck, on my flashlight, I had a big 12-volt flashlight, I had a reel. And you hook up to something on the outside, and you just, like a fishing line, you unreel yourself as you're penetrating the wreck. So in case...
to make your way back.
So you can make your way back in case you kick up the silt.
Like a breadcrumb trail in a way.
In case you get penetration and you get the silt, you just reel yourself out of there. Well, he just gung-ho, just went right in there. And I thought to myself, well, I don't want to lose him. And so I did a stupid thing, and I just says, I'll follow him. I didn't put the line out. But he knew where he was going. I didn't know where he was going. I just followed him through the bridge, and there's a hall. And thank goodness there was the door right there, and we went out. It was nice, but there's a lot of wrecks in Lake Michigan, and there's at least 4 or 5 that are nearby. There's an old dredge that had a crane on it. It tipped over. It's sitting on the crane. There's a car ferry Milwaukee. There's a car ferry that sank in 1929 and all lost. It was just 3 miles out.
Oh, the cars?
It was during a storm.
Were the cars cars on?
It was box cars, like train cars.
Okay.
And they had one car had an automobile, old, 1929,
yeah.
And it had a lot of Kohler stuff like bathtubs and stuff. And there's still, you go in there and you look, and you can still the white shininess from the tub.
Is the white? I'm sorry. Is the car still there?
Oh yeah. Nobody wants to bother taking out. It's worth more to take out than it is for the value.
Okay.
But when we got used to the wreck, I mean, we penetrated the ship and got it to the box car, and we saw the wreck. It's just sitting there. It's an old whatever model, Ford or whatever, and it was half full. You could just see the steering wheel and the backs of the seats. It was half full of silt. It was kind of neat, and we saw the bathtub and stuff like that. But in that time, we were getting used to it. But there was, when we first initially started getting used to this wreck, now this wreck is deeper. It's anywhere between 100 and 150 feet, I can't remember. And, at that depth, the basic dive depth for a sports diver, you really shouldn't go past 150 feet, especially if you're not certified for deep diving. I think we went to maybe only 160 feet or whatever. Because as you go deeper, you can get nitrogen narcosis. That's where you can get they call it rapture. Or you can get like you're drunk.
Okay.
You lose your senses, and we just wanted to surpass that, and we've never had that problem. And what happened was when we first went on this car from Milwaukee, we were going along and following what they call a rub rail, which is on the outside of the ship, and it's a huge rail. You see them on other ships where when you meet the dock, it kind of bumps into the dock, and it kind of saves the ship's hull from getting any damage.
Okay.
It's midship. It goes just from the stern to the bow.
Okay.
Anyway, so we're following it, and there's portholes. Oh, this is neat, fantastic. And all of a sudden, I'm looking to my right, and we're looking at it and stuff. Wow, this is neat, I look to my left, and there's hull, and there's portholes. And I'm like, how can there be the ship here, and the ship is here? It's only one ship. Well, what happened was the ship broke, and it's like this, where it's, 2 sections. and we were actually starting to go inside the ship, and we weren't ready for that yet. It's baby steps. You gotta take it slow because you don't want to screw up. So he was right ahead of me. I grabbed his fin, and I pointed to this, and he's and I pointed to that, and he's like, and we reversed our course. And we went back out.
Because in that situation, it can become confusing the deeper you go into it because things aren't where they're supposed to be.
Well, we're unfamiliar.
So you think you're somewhere else, and then you're not where you're supposed to be. You try to get out, you can't get out, and
exactly. It's still a problem too. Again, don't forget.
Okay.
But you have to remember, a diver, certification. You have classes like anything else you got to do. You got studying you got to do. You got to go through a pool phase, and a pool phase is where we had to jump in, tank in one hand, and weights in the other hand, and fins, and you got to go to the bottom of the pool. You got to put all the stuff on, and you know. Just to see if you can handle it and go from point A to point B, swim to the other side of the pool. That's one of the things. But there's also the paperwork. I've got somewhere at home, I've got the blueprints of the Willie. We went to the library, Milwaukee Library, downtown, and we did research. They have an area that in the middle of the library, I don't know if it's still there, but it had a lot to do with navigations and the lakes and that. And we found blueprints of the Prince Wilhelm. Oh. That way we kind of familiarize ourselves. Anytime before you go on a dive, we always have a session where the person who's in charge says, well, this is what to expect, this is what not to expect. That's where the shark comes in. Okay. We were wreck diving down in Florida. There's 2 Coast Guard ships that they retired. One was called the Bib and one was called the Duane. I can't remember which one we dove. I think we dove the Bib. It's upright on the bottom. That was a deep wreck. That's where we got our nitrox certification. But we went down. Well, prior to that, we had our talk session, and he says, occasionally down there we have a shark or two. He says, if we come across a shark, just leave him alone. Don't do anything stupid. Don't want to pet him. And he was usually in by the galley.
Who's gonna pet a shark?
Yeah, well, there are dumb people out there, I guess. But, who would keep an alligator and then toss it on the toilet? But, so we went down, and he said that this shark was usually in the galley, the kitchen area. And so I went in, and I looked, and it looked pretty clear. I could see, you could see stuff.
What's the difference between, I guess, diving in, we have the Great Lake of Lake Michigan here, and then you went down to Florida? Oh,
the difference is the temperature, for one thing. Lake Michigan could be colder than cold. That's why you wear a dry suit. And in the oceans, you got 80-degree bath water, visibility 100 feet or more.
Okay. What's visibility over here?
Lake Michigan, when we first started diving, it was less than, sometimes it could be anywhere from your hand in front of your face to 4 feet.
That's awful.
But it's gotten a lot better now, sadly, because of the zebra mussels and that. We had the infestation of zebra mussels that attacked our Great Lakes. And what it does is it eats a lot of the food for some of these other fishes, and the benefit of it is it filters the water. It was a problem for the intake down by Jones Island, the water intakes, because it was clogging, and stuff. And what they do is, I believe they administer chlorine, and that kind of fends them off from going into the screens, into the pumps and stuff. But out by the wrecks, the disadvantage is it cakes the wrecks. So you really don't see the wreck, all you see is zebra mussels. Okay. But it cleared the water. Now you go diving in the Great Lakes, Lake Michigan, you probably see 20 or more feet easily. Got it. That's a good thing, but the wreck isn't the wreck anymore. Now it's just a big pile of, it's still a wreck, but it's all zebra mussel. Oh. They're not very big, but when you got thousands of them, they came in through the locks from an incoming ocean ship. Wow. That's one of our problems. That's why we got some of these other fish that are not part of our Great Lakes system. I can't remember what the fish are, but it's they're wild and they just take over like everything else. But it's that's one of the drawbacks when you're out on Lake Michigan. When you're out, you have to excuse me. I'm trying to remember everything. It's all jumping into my head. When we would go down to the ocean, It was bath water, 100 foot visibility. But so we were on this wreck.
How deep?
The bib was close to 120 to 150 feet, I think.
Okay.
And it's upright and it's in pretty good shape still because it's a newer wreck at the time. And we would go in.
When you say upright, it's just.
It was sitting like you would see it at a dock.
At a dock. So
yeah, normal. It was upright. Like just like this room is normal. I mean.
So it's just normal.
Just normal. It sank just down to the bottom.
Oh wow.
The bottom of the ship is on the bottom and the top.
When did it sink?
Roughly. I'm not sure. They intentionally sunk it.
Okay.
They made artificial reefs out of the two ships because they were past their service prime, and so they used them as reefs. Well, we went there, and there was Institute of Sharks, but there was no problem there. And we went in, and I'm looking down this long hallway. You know, you got the hallway inside, and you got all these rooms. And so I started swimming that way, thinking my brother-in-law was with me. Nice guy. And I'm looking in the rooms. Okay, yeah, this is cool. You know, and it's a little bulky because at that point I'm wearing two 80 cubic inch tanks on my back, so it's a little heavier. Or not heavier, but it's bulkier.
Yeah.
And I'm swimming, and I turn around, and there's nobody with me. It's like they're all sitting there watching to see if something would happen to me because I'm down on this other end now. But, you know, it was fun. My brother-in-law met me down on the other end, and we were fooling around. I come across the head or the bathroom. And so he's got a picture of me sitting on the toilet in my diving gear, just sitting there. You know, it's just fun stuff. But you know, there's a lot of fun down there. We dove another ship down there, and it was called the. It'll come to me. It was another ship down there, and
what year is this that you're doing all this?
Years? I think it was in the 80s.
This is in the 80s.
Yeah, it was another ship down there, and it was upright again. You know, and this was a ship that. It was taken by the Coast Guard because it was transporting drugs.
Okay.
And they ended up sinking it.
Yeah.
You know, and when they sink it, they just don't pop a hole in and sink it. You know, there's a lot to go into sinking a ship due to the federal government. You have to take out all the fuel oil or anything that could hurt the ecosystem. And so then they sink it, and we made a dive on it one time, and there was one guy that didn't have a dive buddy. So did not. So we took him under our wing. I mean, you got to do the right thing.
Right.
You know, even though he's kind of hampering our fun, but we had a plan. But we don't know this guy. We don't know what his experience is, so we got to kind of like babysit him. Yeah. But he was a good diver, and we dove, and we still had fun. And I'm glad we watched him because it was a really rough out there on the ocean. It was really rough on the bottom because the current was strong. I got there's where I'm on the back of the ship. I'm holding on to a rail, and my brother-in-law's holding on to another rail across from me, and he's trying to take a picture of me. And as you go to the ascent line, the bubbles, the current was so strong that the bubbles are going sideways. They're not going up. So I mean, you know, but we survived. We had a good time.
Under the water, what's going on? It's just like looking at the top of. I mean, this is like to get a visual from somebody who's never been 100 feet underneath the water. So like there's a river running, right? And we just kind of stick our hand in and it's like dragging in that direction.
Right.
Is that what's going underneath the water as well?
Correct.
Same thing?
Yeah, depending on the weather conditions, those currents can be pretty strong. Like I said, they can put your bubbles sideways.
But could it drag you somewhere that you don't want it to take
that's
you?
why I was holding on to that rail. I could have been pushed off I could have survived. I would have had to swim back, but I would have really had to kick it to swim back.
What about getting back up in those situations?
Oh, well, you're hanging onto the ship along the way.
Okay.
And you come to the ascent line, and you hang onto the ascent line.
Okay.
And you don't feel confident, you can always attach a line to the line and just work your way up. You know, you got like a carabiner, like what they use in mountain climbing.
Yep.
You just clip it on and you just go up.
Okay.
There was one situation, now that I'm thinking about it, out in Lake Michigan, we were finishing a dive, and we were coming up. We did our decompression stops. And all of a sudden, I'm like 10 or 15 feet from the surface. All of a sudden, my weight belt, I had a 31-pound weight belt. Picture these big lead squares on a belt. All of a sudden, the belt comes loose. And I grab it real fast. Otherwise, it would have sank to the bottom. My brother-in-law's below me and some other divers. I would have hit them and it could have killed them or whatever.
Did you kill them with that?
Huh?
Is it that heavy?
31 pounds.
But
You'd
you're
like,
in
you'd
the-
like to
you're in
take
the
a
wa-
sledgehammer 31 pounds and drop it on your head? I mean, yeah.
Well, you're in the water. It
What?
doesn't descend.
It doesn't float. It's weight is weight, okay? Weight is weight. If I took the air out of my suit, I would sink.
Right.
But I held on to it. Well, this is a dry suit. It's like a large condom or a large balloon.
Okay.
So what happens when you take this weight, which is kind of keeping you steady one way or the other, all the air is going to my feet now. So I'm hanging on to the line upside down.
Did these guys see you hanging upside down?
Well, maybe my brother-in-law did. Nobody on the surface did because I'm still like 10 or 15 feet down.
Yeah.
And I thought, what do I do? Well, I'm not going to let go of this weight belt. And I don't think I can turn around my feet back down and try to make it. I says, I'm just going to suck up and let the people make fun of me when I pop to the surface feet first.
Wow.
And that's what happened. I popped up feet first. I was able to swing my way around because now I'm on the surface. And all of a sudden I looked and there was nobody on the back of the boat. So I acted cool. I'm hanging, and the guy finally came back. I handed him my weight belt. Didn't say nothing about it. Oh, I told Wayne, but I guess he was right below me. He saw it. So, but yeah, a lot of good experiences, and then we had a lot of bad experiences. With things you have to do. This is the part where you mentioned about the body. We were diving up in Red Granite, which is west of Oshkosh. There's a little town called Amaro, and then you just go 43 to 21 and go. But anyways. And we were doing a dive in Red Granite, where it used to be the deepest quarry in Wisconsin, and it's not the deepest anymore. Now there's another lake further, another quarry further north. And so we go and we go to the quarries, and we come across each other as we're swimming along, and okay, we're at our limits. We did our 2-tank dive, and we're at our limits. It's like everything else. You got to know you're limited. How much time you got? Even though you decompressed, when you dive, you make a 2-tank dive. You dive your deep dive first, then your shallow dive, because that way it doesn't affect you because you can get affected by decompression or the bend or whatever. And so we were at our end of our dive, and we were coming in, and I looked up, and over by the wall there was a guy in a suit, and he's waving for us to come in. And I'm like, whoa, what's wrong? We got our flag, our float. We're not doing anything wrong.
You say a suit.
A regular.
Oh, like a suit?
Yeah, 3-piece suit. 2-piece suit, whatever, the tie. And so he's waving us to come in. Well, as I'm getting closer, I see he's got a badge. I'm thinking, what did we do wrong? And he says, we need your help. Okay, would you be willing to help us? There was another quarry, Flynn Quarry, nearby, about a mile further to the east. And he says, this family, they were from Kenosha, and they had the one young man. He was 19 years old. I'm not gonna mention names. But the thing is, to this day, this was way back, like in the 80s or I can't remember anymore. I remember the guy's name, but I'm not gonna go. Anyway, so he asked us to assist him, and the funny thing with Red Granite is right across from the quarry is the fire station, and they normally have a rescue diver, but they weren't available. They were somewhere else, maybe taking a class or something, I don't know. So he asked if we'd help. Well, yeah, of course you're going to help. That's the right thing to do. And so but this is back when we still had wetsuits, so that's how long ago it was. We didn't have a dry suit, we had a regular neoprene wetsuit, a 2-piece wetsuit.
Okay.
So your body gets wet, but the neoprene keeps the water close, in the suit keeps it closer to your body, so your own body heat kind of warms yourself up.
Got it.
But anyways, we didn't take our gear off. We took our tank off, and we had to have the tanks filled. Well, across at the fire station, they had a compressor, so we were able to fill our tanks. And it's just not like a compressor you buy at Home Depot or whatever. It's a special compressor. It's only compressed gas, but it's at a higher volume. It's like 3,000 psi. And so the guy filled it, and that took at least 15, 20 minutes. And I'm thinking, well, this guy's, it's going to be a body. We're not going to have anybody alive. So we got in our car. My brother-in-law had a manual transmission van, and this cop car was a unmarked police car. So the guy's booking like crazy with his siren and all that. People are pulling over. My brother and I were sitting on these vinyl seats, soaking, dripping on and everything, and he's trying to drive, keep up with him, shifting. And every time the guy goes by, these people are cutting in front of us. So So, we were able to catch up to him. We got to the quarry, and it was like a TV show. You look on one wall, and there's all these people from the town because they heard something's going on and they wanted to be there. On the other end was a lower area where you can enter the quarry. It's only like a foot or two above the water level, and that was basically the police and paramedics and stuff. And we had another buddy named Mike, and the three of us, we went looking, and we found the guy. He was on the bottom. It was like 50 feet, I believe, and he was face up, and his hands were up, and his eyes were open, And you have that moment of freaking, but this guy's dead, And so we got him up, and the moment we penetrated the surface, a paramedic came to a knee-deep water, grabbed the guy, and I was watching. When you're down there, he was down there for at least an hour and a half, whatever. He was down, and the paramedic swipes out his mouth because all this foam and stuff from the stomach is coming up. And he starts giving him mouth-to-mouth, and I thought, man, here, bringing the body was one thing, but this guy's, that's his job. He's trying to breathe life into a dead body. And because the water was cold, they were hoping that they could revive him. I mean, it was cold water, it was under 50 degrees or whatever it was. It was cold. And they worked on it for about an hour before they called it. We brought him up about 1, and it was closer to 3 when they finally called it. And the reason I'm thinking about this is because I've got the article somewhere. The Oshkosh paper actually had a picture, and all you see is our backs with our tanks on. We're just standing there. We don't know what to do. They're working on him. The family's freaking, crying and all that. And you want to console them, but you don't know the whole situation, and you don't want to make things worse, so you just stand there. So you got a picture of us, and our names are there, and like, wow, we're celebrities. But then I'm thinking, I wish I could be a celebrity for someone that they could bring back to life. Then I'd really feel good. But they, unfortunately, he didn't make it. And when we left, we were hopeful, because at that time we didn't know if they're going to bring him back or not. We were hopeful, but we knew in our hearts that this guy's not coming back. And he's going to have one empty spot in his family's dinner table. It's just going to be, I don't know if he was 19. So maybe he wasn't married, but yeah, maybe he was. I don't know. And I really don't want to know, because they'll just draw you more into the situation where, when we drove home that day, we were really quiet in the van. We didn't talk much. We didn't want to talk about it. And then when we found out the article that he didn't make it and all that, then we started to open up about it. But it's something you got to do. Right. Whenever yesterday we were coming back, we went to go see a movie with my brother-in-law, and he had a flat tire. I'm behind him about a half. Memory card full?
Yeah, you're good. I got this guy.
Okay, I'm behind him about a half mile. All of a sudden I see he's off to the side, so I pull over, and he's got a flat tire. So he didn't have a spare. So he's got one of these little compressors that you plug into the cigarette lighter, and he's trying to get the air. But you could tell this tire was beyond hope. So we drove, my godson who was with me and I drove back to his house, got the spare, came back, changed it. So, it was quite an experience. And we just, oh boy, I look nice and fat. Anyways, but like I say, it's just one of many experiences in life that you gotta just say, hey, we don't dive anymore. I wish we did. I'd like to go back in the water, because there are other times that were really great. When we dive down in the ocean, you got the coral, and you got the colorful coral, and you got the beautiful fish. There was a wreck in Key West that we dove, where you had parrot fishes, and you had angel fishes. The angel fishes, you might see them in like an aquarium, and they're about this big. This angel fish was like that big. It's just on a shipwreck. It's really great. There was one time that we were coming in, and the second dive, a shallow dive, these guys went lobster hunting.
What's a shallow dive?
Less than 30 feet or less.
Okay.
And they were in lobster diving. They had these long, like grabber arms, kind of, and they knew where the lobsters were in the coral, and they would get the coral. They get to the coral, they see the lobsters, they grab them, and they bring them up. They have these little things that look where they can measure them, because you can only take a certain legal length. If it's too small, put it back. So we we go and we get to the surface. We get on the boat, and there's lobsters. They just put the lobsters on the deck. They're going all over the place. We had like 100 lobsters crawling around, and they didn't have little rubber bands on their claws. So we're trying to get into our street clothes, and you got all these lobsters. I'm surprised none of us got bit on our toes, but that was an experience. It was a lot of good experiences. There was one time we were diving, and we come across, we were into our shallow dive, our 30-foot dive, and we looked up, and we're almost out of air, and we're looking up, and we see moon jellyfish. And what it is these jellyfish, they go to about 12-inch diameter. They have stingers, they're not lethal, but they can poke you. And we looked up, and I'm not lying. They get drawn by the current, dragged along. I'm not lying, there was 1,000 of them easy. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I hope we don't get stung, because the previous night we were camping. There was a tide pool, where the water goes back out, and there's this little puddle, this little pool. And the pool was really interesting because it had a couple of baby moon jellyfish, and it had a horseshoe crab. If you're familiar with a horseshoe crab, it's got a hard shell and a long tail like a stingray. And these creatures are prehistoric. I mean, they've had them back in the prehistoric days, according to scientists. But it's really interesting looking at them. When you tip them over, they got little, it looks like an alien creature.
Yeah.
But they're really interesting. But there's moon jellyfish, at least 1,000 of them. My brother-in-law goes up first, and they're just floating between our legs and around us. And then I go up. We didn't get stung. My niece, with a little baby one, she got stung that night. But, it doesn't kill you. It's just irritation, like a bee sting.
Okay.
Unless, of course, you're allergic to bees. But, yeah, it was quite an experience. And I had so much fun on my travels. And like I said, my brother-in-law, thanks to him, I was able to go everywhere. I've gone, everywhere from, we did Connecticut and on the East Coast, and then all the way to California, Texas, into Canada.
So you guys been all over the country pretty much.
Yes. I've been very blessed.
Wow.
If my health holds out, maybe we could travel again. I mean, we've come to the point that, you work for a living, and you really got no money, but you work and you're happy because, you're together. Well, we still have money, but I mean, we're better off than we were then because we're retired. I don't have to go to a 9-to-5 job, which I never had. I was always either third shift or early first shift. And, I wanted to travel, but now it's kind of harder because I have a hard time getting around. My wife is on oxygen, and you want to fly, you got to follow certain rules. It's going to be difficult. And then I want to go to Hawaii before I pass, but you got to get around. I want to go to the Missouri that's there, and to Arizona, and to all these other wrecks, because I'm into that. And it'd be very hard for me to get around. I'd probably have to use a walker again, or get myself a wheelchair that is drivable. I don't want, nobody can push me. Well, I mean, my wife, can you picture a crunched over lady with a walker and oxygen trying to push a wheelchair with a big fat guy like me in it? Oh my gosh.
That'd be a strong woman.
Yeah, she would be. But I'd like to do that, but I don't think that's going to happen, I mean, like I said, we took a cruise to Alaska. That was beautiful. Again, it was my brother-in-law's idea. And I appreciate him saying, let's do Alaska. He originally wanted to rent a motorhome. I mean, he had a motorhome down here, but we weren't going to drive all the way up there with this big motorhome. Yeah. So he wanted to rent one up there and go across Alaska. And I'm like,
that sounds like a good time.
Yeah, right. Polar bears and everything else. Thank you very much. Yeah. So we agreed upon the inner channel and that's basically from British Columbia,
Canada.
Yeah, in Canada to I think we went to Juneau at first. It might have been Juneau. Well, it was the Inner Passage, and it was fun. But we went to 3 places. We went to Juneau, which is the capital of Alaska, and it's a big town, big city. Skagway and Ketchikan, and those are smaller towns. And just to see the sights, and it was really good. We got to see not glaciers, but they might be a glacier. You know, where you got the runoff. It's all frozen. It comes to the lake.
Mm.
You know, and what they did on the ship is they brought up a big chunk of ice. And boy, you know, it's like you've never seen ice before, but you know, this was weird ice. It was blue.
Mm.
And they were told us that the blue is due to lack of oxygen in the ice. It turns blue, which was okay. You know, I don't know how old this piece of ice is, because it's part of the glacier. You know, it might be
blue, like the color blue.
Yeah, kind of color blue, light blue. But you know, it was fun. You know, we had good times. My brother-in-law, unfortunately, they kind of got screwed up when it came to our trip, because when Rita and I, when we got on the plane, you take a puddle jumper from Milwaukee to Chicago, and that takes so short of a time. They tell you to keep your seatbelt on. You know, you don't walk around. So we get to Chicago, then there's a transfer, and we took this plane to I think was it British Columbia or was it Seattle? It was one way or the other. A plane.
Okay.
A bigger plane, and you know we had nice seats. They actually moved us, I think, up to like a business class versus economy or whatever, because I had like a curtain behind us separating us, my wife and I. And my wife's never flown. I've flown a bunch of times. When I was a kid, I went to Europe to visit family and that. But she was so excited. I let her have the window seat. She's never flown, and she's, you know, like a little kid, you know, in a candy store. And I was happy that she was happy. And for my brother-in-law, it was him, his wife, and their daughter, and they kind of got separated. They didn't have 3 seats together, and they were back there, you know, unfortunately. And it was the same like on the ship. We didn't take the most expensive, because we couldn't afford the most expensive room, you know, with its own little patio. But we had a nice room. It had a little separate living room, had a couch in, you know, and the window was at least as big as your, you know, maybe a little larger than the window you have here. And we could, you know, see the ship. I'd see the outside, see the ocean and that, you know. Go over to my brother-in-law's, and the room was more or less the same, except you look out his window and all you could see was a boat davit with a lifeboat. Oh. We were on the boat deck. He couldn't see the ocean.
It was blocking the view?
Blocking the view. So he was screwed up on the plane, and he was screwed up on the boat. But he didn't complain. He doesn't complain. And we had a good time. I mean, you know, that kind of a trip that we had was basically, and some people might not like this, it was basically, you know, self-serve. They had the little, you know, where you go through and you...
Like a buffet?
Yeah, like a buffet, kind of. Yeah. And some people don't like it. I didn't mind it. The food was good.
Yeah.
And we did a one time where you dress up in a nice suit and fancy and all that, and it was good too, but, yeah. But
what would you say, then, I guess, you told me a bunch about a bunch of different experiences in life and things you've went through when you were younger, from your father, from your mother. Now, you know, you've lived through multiple
experiences,
but these right now, what are they? Diseases, sicknesses?
Well, yeah, sickness or disease, call either one.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has, from what I've been told, has a cancer cell in them. It's a matter of if it gets active or not.
Okay.
It's just like another cell, and it goes the wrong way. So unfortunately, mine went the wrong way. And the funny thing is, it seems to be more of an occurrence now, because the guys I used to work with, I knew at least 2 that developed cancer. One had a prostate, and one had, I'm not sure, it was pancreas or something. It was something else, you know. And they're still alive, and they're happy.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if they're in remission, but they're happy. I'm not in remission yet, since now they found 2 more spots.
Right.
But yeah, cancer is more common now, unfortunately, because you watch TV shows, commercials, where if you've developed this and you get cancer from here, cancer from there, you know, it's more common.
Terrible.
And it is a disease. It's a problem, but I'll overcome. I'll vanquish it, and I'll be successful, and maybe get another 10 years at least, I hope.
What would you tell people who are in their 20s or, like let's say they're 18, 19, 20s, early 20s, in their 30s right now, even in their 40s? Like, what would you tell them?
Well,
to prep for life?
yes, you should live your life. You should have a good life. Don't let things hold you back if you're uncertain, because it might pass you by and you might say, when you're older, you say, I wish I would have done that. And well, wishes don't always come true. You gotta go out for it. Go for the gusto, but don't go past your means. You like if you want to go to the casino, play a little gambling, you got to know your limits, and that's like everything else in life. You got to know your limits, and if you're old enough, try to be respectful of other people. That's one of the things we lack nowadays. We don't have respect. People have lost their morals, their moral compass. You have respect. You treat people like you want to be treated. Okay, like I said earlier, I worked at J.C. Penney, and Mr. Penny's motto was the golden rule. Treat them as you want to be treated.
That's right.
And so that's what you got to do. And I had a good life. I had good parents. I had good family. And you should not wait to the end or when it's too late to want to do things. Don't let things hold you back. As long as it's not going to hold you back. You gotta just go for it sometimes if you can. And I'm not talking about anything stupid or dangerous. But like I say, if you can travel, then travel. Because I could tell you, from every person that I know that has traveled, there's 100 that I know that never left the city.
Wow.
And that's nothing.
Yeah.
You've traveled.
Yeah.
I mean, did you get something out of it? You enjoyed it. You got to maybe see family and whatever. And you got to see a different place.
Yeah. Different territories, different
areas.
You get to see what the world is like outside of.
All right.
It gives you what's called, English teacher told me, worldliness.
Yes.
It builds your worldliness.
You got to build your worldliness. Exactly. That's a good phrase. And you just got to make sure that, if you treat people right, you'll be surprised that people will actually treat you right. If they're properly raised.
Right.
Mm-hmm. You'll always get those rejects, unfortunately. I call them rejects because, their parents, I don't want to blame the parents, but they must have did something wrong with the moral upbringing because, you get these people that commit crimes, that are thieves, that are thefts and all this kind of stuff. There is no need for that.
Right.
If I needed help right now, I know a dozen people that would help me, and I didn't get what I have or do what I got, get anything in life by myself by doing something wrong. It's by doing something right. And so that's basically it. Just live your life, but also take your responsibilities. If you got a job, do your job, do it right, make yourself proud. Your bosses might not really care, but you have to care inside your body and say, I did a good job today and I feel good about it. And then I can openly say, hey, I want to go do something. If you get your time off, I want to do something instead of just sitting at home watching TV.
There we go. Beautiful.
Yeah, well.
Manfred, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And all of you, I hope you get something out of this. I've learned a lesson kind of the hard way. Lead a healthy life. That's one thing, too. You gotta go and eat the right foods. I'm not saying I ate the wrong foods, but unfortunately, whatever I ate was a little too much, as you can tell. But just live your life, do the right things, and you'll be surprised how far you'll go in life.
Thank you, Manfred.
Thank you very much for having me.
I already know. Cool.
Is it done?
Yep.
Did I screw up?
No, that was great.
I hope it was good.
Yeah, it was awesome. All diving stories.
Well, I went a little long on that, but
that's fine.
There were other things I would have wanted to tell you. There was a time we went up to Q in the Peninsula.